At the peak of their romance, when the world saw them as the picture-perfect couple, Elvis Presley did the unthinkable. He sent Priscilla away. But why? Was it the explosive rumors of an engagement to his Viva Las Vegas co-star Ann-Margret? Or was there something even more shocking happening behind the scenes? The tension inside Graceland was at an all-time high. Whispers of betrayal filled the air, and Priscilla found herself caught in the middle of a storm she never saw coming. What really happened behind those closed doors? Stay with us, because the truth is more unbelievable than you could ever imagine. Elvis and Priscilla Presley's relationship was anything but ordinary. From the moment they met, their love story played out under the relentless glare of the public eye. She was young, devoted, and deeply in love with the man the world saw as a king. But behind the glitz and glamour, their romance was far from the fairy tale it appeared to be. With constant scrutiny from the press, intense pressure from Elvis's management, and the whispers of other women always lingering in the background, Priscilla found herself in a world where trust was fragile, and reality was often overshadowed by spectacle. And soon, one particular rumor would shake the foundation of everything she believed. That rumor centered around Ann-Margret, the fiery red-haired beauty who starred alongside Elvis in Viva Las Vegas. Their chemistry on screen was electric, so undeniable that even audiences could feel the heat radiating from every scene. But what happened when the cameras stopped rolling? The gossip columns painted a picture of a romance that went beyond Hollywood magic, sparking speculation that Ann-Margret had become more than just a co-star. For Priscilla, the headlines weren't just sensationalized stories, they were warning signs that her place in Elvis's life might not be as secure as she once thought. Then came the bombshell. Reports surfaced claiming that Elvis and Ann-Margret were engaged. The story spread like wildfire, igniting a media frenzy that forced Priscilla to confront a terrifying question. Was she about to lose Elvis forever? But when she finally gathered the courage to ask him about the swirling rumors, she was met with a response she never expected. Not only did Elvis refuse to comfort her fears, but what he did next was even more shocking. Something so drastic, so unthinkable, that it left Priscilla reeling. And that's when everything changed. Elvis stormed into the house, his usual charming demeanor replaced by something darker: anger, frustration, maybe even panic. In his hand, a crumpled newspaper, its bold headline screaming out a claim that sent shockwaves through the Presley household: Elvis and Ann-Margret engaged. He flung the paper against the wall, his voice filled with rage as he cursed the reporters who dared print such a thing. But beneath the fury, was there something else? Guilt? Fear? Priscilla watched him closely, searching his face for reassurance, for any sign that he would laugh it off, that he would tell her the rumors were ridiculous. But the words she desperately needed never came. Instead, what he said next sent an icy chill through her. She had been dreading this moment for weeks, silently battling her own doubts as the tabloids churned out one headline after another about Elvis and Ann-Margret. And now, standing in front of him, she expected him to comfort her, to remind her that she was the one he loved. But instead of putting her mind at ease, Elvis did the unthinkable. He told her to leave. His reasoning was blunt. The press would be swarming, the questions would be relentless, and his manager, Colonel Parker, had advised him that it was best if she went back to Memphis until things settled down. It was a command, not a request. Priscilla felt the ground shift beneath her. Was this really happening? After everything she had endured, after staying by his side through every challenge, he was sending her away just like that? The question hung heavy in the air. Was Elvis hiding something, or was this just another calculated move to protect his image? The king of rock and roll wasn't just a music icon. He was a carefully crafted public persona, controlled and manipulated by forces far greater than himself. And in that moment, Priscilla had to wonder, was she collateral damage in a battle between truth and perception? Or was there something even deeper at play? something she wasn't yet ready to face. One thing was certain: whatever was happening behind closed doors was far more complicated than any headline could reveal. Priscilla had held back her emotions for as long as she could, swallowing her doubts, pushing aside the growing ache in her heart. But at that moment, standing in front of the man she had devoted herself to, hearing him so casually dismiss her pain, something inside her snapped. Without thinking, she grabbed the nearest object, a delicate vase that sat on a side table, and hurled it against the wall. The sharp crash echoed through the room as shards of glass scattered across the floor, a physical manifestation of the emotions she could no longer contain. "I hate her," she screamed, her voice raw with betrayal. "Why doesn't she stay in Sweden where she belongs?" Her chest heaved, her hands trembled, but all she saw was Elvis standing there, unshaken, his expression unreadable. She had expected him to comfort her, to finally tell her that none of this was real, that she was the only one who mattered. But instead, what he said next cut even deeper. Elvis barely flinched at her outburst. Instead, he looked at her with a strange mix of amusement and indifference, as if her anger was nothing more than a temporary inconvenience. "Honey," he said, his voice calm but firm, "I need a woman who's going to understand that things like this might just happen." The words hung in the air like a slap to the face. Priscilla stared at him, her fury quickly turning to devastation. Was this his way of admitting it? That the rumors weren't just rumors? That this was simply a reality she had to accept if she wanted to be with him? It wasn't just the betrayal that hurt. It was the way he made her feel small, as if her emotions were nothing more than a nuisance. She had fought so hard to be the perfect woman for him, to fit into the world he had created, but at that moment, she realized that no matter what she did, she would never truly have control. But was Elvis truly this cold, or was there something more behind his behavior? His words carried a weight that felt rehearsed, calculated even. Was this really how he felt, or was he just following orders? Colonel Tom Parker, the mastermind behind Elvis's career, had always been known for his ruthless control over Elvis's personal and professional life. Had he pressured Elvis into pushing Priscilla away, convincing him that this was the only way to silence the press? Or had Elvis simply made his choice, deciding that the life of a global icon meant he could never truly belong to just one woman? Whatever the reason, one thing was certain. Something had shifted between them that night. And for Priscilla, the illusion of a fairy tale romance was beginning to shatter. Years later, long after the whispers had faded and the headlines had been replaced with new scandals, Ann-Margret finally spoke about what really happened between her and Elvis. In her memoir, she didn't hold back. She admitted that what they shared wasn't just Hollywood chemistry or a fleeting romance for the cameras. It was real, it was electric, and it was something neither of them could control. "We both felt a current, an electricity that went straight through us," she wrote, describing a connection that seemed to transcend everything else in their lives. But despite the passion, despite the undeniable pull between them, there was always an invisible barrier, one that neither of them could fully break through. And whether it was fate, timing, or something even more complicated, the fact remained. Their love story was never meant to last. But was it just a fling, or did it go deeper? Ann-Margret herself admitted that marriage wasn't just a rumor. It was a real conversation. They had talked about it, imagined a future together, even entertained the possibility of making their relationship something more. But there was one problem: Priscilla. No matter how much Ann-Margret and Elvis may have wanted to be together, the reality was that Elvis had already made a commitment, one that wasn't just about love, but about image, reputation, and obligation. And as much as he may have felt drawn to Ann-Margret, he couldn't simply walk away from the life he had built with Priscilla. The pressure was mounting, the expectations weighing down on him, and in the end, he was forced to choose between passion and responsibility. But was it really that simple? Could Elvis truly love two women at the same time, or was there something deeper going on beneath the surface? Throughout his life, Elvis struggled with the weight of his fame, the demands of those around him, and the constant battle between his desires and his duty. Was Ann-Margret just another symptom of a larger crisis? A man searching for something he couldn't quite name? Or was she the one that got away? The love he could never fully claim? One thing was certain. Whatever happened between them left a mark, one that neither of them could ever erase. And for Priscilla, knowing the truth may have been even more painful than the rumors themselves. As Priscilla packed her bags and prepared to return to Memphis, the weight of what had just happened settled over her like a heavy fog. This wasn't how things were supposed to be. She had spent years believing in the fairy tale, convincing herself that she and Elvis were meant to be, that nothing, not the pressures of fame, not the other women, not even the whispers of scandal, could come between them. But now, as she boarded the plane back home, she couldn't shake the sinking feeling in her chest. Had she been fooling herself all along? The man who once made her feel like the center of his world had sent her away without hesitation. And as much as she wanted to believe it was just a temporary storm, something deep inside her whispered that this was the beginning of something far more devastating. Back in Hollywood, the fire between Elvis and Ann-Margret was slowly burning out. The intense passion that had once drawn them together began to fade under the weight of reality. Whatever fantasies they may have shared about a future together were ultimately just that, fantasies. Elvis had obligations, a carefully crafted image to maintain, and Ann-Margret knew she couldn't compete with the world that had already been built around him. Their relationship quietly came to an end, but unlike others who had been discarded from Elvis' life, Ann-Margret never spoke bitterly about him. Instead, she held on to the memories of the man she knew behind the fame, the generous, kind, and deeply complex soul who had once shared an undeniable connection with her. While their time together was over, the respect and admiration she felt for him remained, untouched by the drama that surrounded his life. For Priscilla, however, the cracks in her perfect world were no longer just rumors or fleeting doubts. They were becoming impossible to ignore. She had returned to Memphis as Elvis had asked, waiting, hoping that when she was finally allowed back into his life, things would be different. But deep down, something had shifted. The realization that she was dispensable, that Elvis could push her aside when it suited him, planted a seed of doubt that would only grow with time. And though she would stay by his side for years to come, that moment, the moment he sent her away, may have been the first time she truly understood what her place in his life really was. It would take time, heartbreak, and even more betrayal, but one day it would be Priscilla who walked away. And when she finally did, it wouldn't be because of rumors. It would be because she had finally decided she was worth more than the life Elvis had given her. Elvis Presley's love life was filled with passion, heartbreak, and choices that shaped not just his world, but the legacy he left behind. But what if things had been different? What if he had chosen Ann-Margret instead of Priscilla? Would history have taken a completely different turn? Would Elvis have found lasting happiness, or was he always destined for a life of longing and regret? We want to hear from you. Do you believe Elvis truly loved Priscilla? Or was Ann-Margret the one that got away? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into one of Elvis's most dramatic love stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another jaw-dropping story about the king of rock and roll. Share this video with fellow Elvis fans, and let's keep the conversation going.